Internet is not how we imagine it. All that apparent orderly ecosystem of social networks is nothing more than a vile appearance. Right now, it is turning into such a ridiculously violent mode that it is difficult to guess what is going to happen to it. And even more important, what is going to happen to us, the users. That is, you just have to look at the signs. Mark Zuckerberg, one of the guys who gathered the most money and power thanks to his bets around social networks. Someone with one of the largest data banks. He gambled for several years betting billions of dollars on a move that in the end seems to be catastrophically wrong. We are talking about one of the people who could say yes. Perhaps it is not one of the 5 people who know the most about the internet. But it is one with ultra-privileged information and also someone capable of paying the 5 people. And who is still failing so miserably to understand social networks and the internet. That his empire of social networks is suffering such catastrophic losses as to break countries with small economies. I wonder how many people will be seeing, this feeling of total uncertainty. This feeling of such great chaos where even the giants of the subject do not stop failing in their predictions and their actions about this. That is, what was once amazing or was a great achievement, something that one put in the history books, is becoming more and more little. You know, that in just 10 years Facebook went from being any MySpace rival to being the largest social network company in the world. With a cluster of properties so large that it almost looks like a monopoly. Well, now that does not seem so shocking compared to what, in just almost 4 years. An application, a network, that was made by few people and in record time, TikTok became the fastest reaching social network of 1,000 million users. We are talking about such a brutal, so fast incursion, that if in 2018 YouTube was algorithmically punishing those videos that had a short duration. Already in 2020 it was looking in the most desperate way possible to develop and put its own section of shorts. Or on the other hand, do you remember when the stories appeared? It seemed that it was the next big thing, the great trend that everyone was going to want on their networks, even Twitter was added for a while. However, in just a few years, especially since the rise of TikTok, they began to feel increasingly outdated, more out of date. That is, I do not know if anyone ever wondered, stories would not be just another way to put states on a social network. Only that instead of being pure text, it can be a video, it can be an image with a context and music, it can be 1,000 things with filters. Yes, I do not know, I cannot imagine if someone in the offices of Facebook, Instagram or Twitter. Because they did not think that stories would rather be a second timeline, but animated and with images, instead of an addition to the normal timeline of the social network. I say this because it seems that TikTok did understand that, and perhaps someone in their offices said, well, why instead of adding this of stories, adding this of putting videos, why not in a direct way, we make a network where that is already pure videos, instead of handling publications, where you invite the user to write long and abstract texts. That yes, they can be very communicative, but they generate less engagement. In other words, when Facebook in 2017 was with the revolutionary idea of stories, in 2016 TikTok was already advancing. Yes, it seems that Facebook had the opportunity to beat TikTok before it was a real competition. And it could not do it for the very important reason of continuing with a structure that, despite the fact that it has changed a lot during these years. The truth is that it already seems too slow, old and saturated for these times. There is a saying that predicting the future is always easy when the future has already happened. That is, now that all this has happened, it is very easy to say it, but the truth is that back in 2017, when Facebook was with all this, it seemed that what they were doing, and even today they continue to do, this heavy, ultra-mega complex social networks, increasingly full of functionalities, to the point where they can confuse you, well, that was it, right? That was what the public wanted, an application where you had absolutely everything, entertainment, people, opinions, communication and others. In other words, even before something was announced about the metaverse, Facebook, the largest social network in the world, was already failing to predict what people wanted, and the thing does not end here. Then we have Elon Musk, who, to begin with, came to a Twitter that, no matter how much fame and recognition this social network had, it was a site that was in a slow and painful crisis, not only because it was a completely stagnant network in its growth, but also because it was a network that lost $4 million a day. At the moment, a few days after Musk has bought and taken control of this social network, the general feeling, and what has been seen, what has been done, is that it seems that there is no finely designed plan based on predictions and clear and well-studied strategies. but rather, more than strategies, improvised reactions, with so little force, background and arguments, that the best thing to do is to put them out there in public and wait for people to tell you if they are right or wrong. Something that, the truth is, sounds even democratic, sounds good. It wouldn't be so bad if, among the masses of social networks, there really could be something like a discussion. And not see magnified and exaggerated reactions clashing with each other, to the point where they turn into memes or pure absurds. What I say is that if the guy who became fucking millionaire and powerful with social networks, and the richest guy on the planet, do not seem to be very clear what is happening with social networks, like to be making wavering bets, or to be already making terrible mistakes, I think it's time to say this. This is the end of the internet as we know it. Again. It's amazing how little has been said and reflected about how it's been 2 times. That users have been losing power over the internet. And how it seems that in fact we are heading to a 3rd occasion. It's amazing how the debate continues to be about how they are going to take away our freedom, when in fact they have already taken it away from us, 2 times. The first time was when the internet stopped being the cyberspace. That where the pioneers practically dreamed and hoped for a future where information would serve to free us from the tyrannies, the control of the media, until the interests and practices, almost monopoly. Because in fact there were many trials on monopoly, like Bill Gates and many other companies, ended up killing the dream and giving the first step to the internet that we have today. That where the user does not even come to question, not the obedient, no, the dependent, that is of the internet companies. An era that ended when the bubble of the .com burst, and thus an endless number of initiatives and companies broke. The second time, and the most recent, the one that surely most of us had to live since 2013, 2015, more or less around there, was the boom of censorship, surveillance and the control of freedom of expression sold more than as something good, as something completely normal. A change that, far from being done for social, moral, ideological reasons, or something like that, was made to make those who really pay happy, and to a certain extent control much of what happens on social networks. Not us, not the users, no, the investors and advertisers. It is quite logical, if on the first occasion that this happened, big businessmen colonized the internet and began to convert it into their own territory. On the second occasion, once the new users that were entering more and more into waves of the internet already had predefined in their mind that the internet was a space where what you do is enter the pages of the companies. What followed was the logical step. It was no longer that the economic interests interceded and regulated the internet. Now the idea was to intercede and regulate what was left to the user, to us, so that they would not only not intervene, but even help the issue of their profits, or even the issue of their ideologies. It is that I say, there was the whole issue of the apocalypse, where what put the whole YouTube and all its content creators. It was not so much that the users got together to complain, or to make a letter to request changes with a lot of signatures. No, what happened was that the advertisers began to distrust the platform and withdraw their money. It is that we already know, but I do not know why we deny it. We know that not even the advertisers with the largest numbers get much attention from the platforms. We know that rarely a hashtag, unless it is exaggeratedly massive, changes the policy of a social network. While the advertisers and investors can change everything in just a week. But still, we have been convinced that this whole scenario of radicalism, control and censorship, which has even expanded beyond social networks, until closing pages of culture, literature, internet files and countless other spaces, is for our mental health, for society, and not for economic interests that do not stop seeing the internet as a simple space for speculation. In the end, all this scenario, which is still going on today, has been swept away with a scenario where, from the left and from the right, various people from the creative and political media have expressed that we have become not only people who accept that they must be watched, but also people who have deeply internalized this whole state of vigilance. Because they are even people who want to watch others, looking for ideas that come to consider, even a little satanized or linked to any ideology that they do not like, or at least that more or less sounds similar. People who, even if they do not say it, or even sometimes say that they are completely against it, with their acts show that they have embraced censorship as the best method of purging, improving and controlling society. In this way, we have already fallen head over heels in the game. We went from social networks where absolutely any nonsense was talked about, to social networks that have become places where freedom of expression is when we talk, debate and fight about the controversial topic of movies, TV series and celebrities of the moment. And not that of, well, having at least a minimum idea of how the algorithms of the networks that we use every day work, what they record and what they do not do about us. And above all, what they do with those records, and a long, etc. No, what we have learned and what has been taught us is that what will improve the world. And all that is to allow executives and owners of social networks to control us as much as they can. As if these networks were not companies, and those who really sent were investors and advertisers. Anyway, the third change that we are going to be seeing is already in process. Zuckerberg believed that this change was the metaverses, others believe that it was the NFTs. And some others believe that no, the change is going to make everything continue the same. Despite the fact that the giants of social networks have been making sudden changes for years. To adapt to an increasingly and more changing medium. To be honest, I personally have no idea what is going to happen. The only thing I do know is that the only trend that can be seen is the increase in control. Because finally a social network that trades in the stock market will always have as one of its maximum objectives to give security and certainty to investors, such as those who hire advertising. But hey, saying something like that, kind of risking myself, speculating perhaps too much beyond what I know, is that if economic interests have already colonized the internet, and then the users colonized us? Well, it could be, and I don't see why not, that political interests also want to get into the game. To play with these new rules where control and regulation of behavior and information. Well, it is no longer something that is done suddenly, it is something that is put on us as something good. Something that is done for all of us. Today, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, no matter the day you are watching this video, is the end of the internet, at least as we know it so far. And I say this because it has already happened, not once, but twice. Thank you very much for watching this video, I really appreciate you from the bottom of my heart.